Well, good. So this is the first ever episode of PhD-Politico Discussions. And for the first episode, we're running the first series on this channel is going to be a channel called What is My Country? And it's going to be discussions on Europe's national independence movements. So I'm delighted to be joined by Valentina Servera Clavell, who is the president of the Youth European Free Alliance and is currently trying to become the SNP's candidate for the 2021 Scottish parliamentary elections in Glasgow, Shettleston. So hello, Valentina, how are you?
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
Are you well? Are you good?
Yes, I'm very good.
And keeping spirits up during the lockdown and
yes, they start becoming the same slowly, but from time to time you have a good day.
So I just want to start with your childhood. So you were born in Barcelona and you moved to Valencia. So when you were growing up, how aware were you of Catalanism as opposed to Spanish identity? How aware of you were that there was two distinct identities, as it were?
Well, I was quite lucky because my mom, my grandparents were honorific members of Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, which is the party which I later on joined, the youth wing. And so my mom was always very politically aware, and my dad is a very working class man as well, and he was very left wing. So both they raised me up being very politically aware, and in my house we always spoke Catalan, whether it was Valencian with my dad or Catalan with my mom. So for me, when I was going out in the streets and people were speaking a different language, or I had to see with who I could speak Catalan and with who I could not feel comfortable speaking Catalan, because there's also a lot of hate or phobia towards Catalans in Valencia, even though historically we've been part of the same kingdom. So then I grew up always very, very aware. And when I was probably 8 or 9 is when I started being like, oh, okay, I like politics. I started liking the Labour Party in Spain, but that lasted like 3 months.
That's the Socialist Party, yeah? The
PSOE is the Socialist Working Party, but it's like Keir Starmer for Labour, you know? It's more centre soft left than left at all. So then I slowly realized, I was like, oh, the blue and the red look the same to me. So, and when I started digging more into my identity as a Catalan person, and my mom started telling me more about Catalonia and the War of Succession and all that stuff, it's when I started embracing my identity. And then the more I was finding out about Catalonia, the more I was getting more into the independence movement at the same time. So it kind of went hand to hand, but I think it all exploded when I was like 12, that I became more like, oh my God, yes, this is home.
So that's when you moved back to Valencia. You moved from Valencia to Barcelona when you were 12.
No, I moved to Barcelona when I was 12. When I was evicted from my house, I moved to Barcelona when I was 13, 14 years, kind of that year, yeah.
And you then, so you joined the Republican left of Catalonia, the ERC, when you were 15. What was it about? I mean, obviously you had the family connection, but did you ever consider joining I think it was the CIU at the time, was the centre-right party there, and there was also the CUP as well, which is the sort of radical left party in Catalonia. Did you ever consider either of those two, or was it always going to be the Republican left was your?
I feel like, I don't know. It's funny now because my grandparents' twin, who I call my grandfather as well, he's now not a member anymore of Esquerra. He's very disappointed, and he's now all for Puigdemont, you know. But I'm still Oriol Junqueras in my heart. He was the one who told me join Esquerra. And the thing is, CIU when I was looking into the web pages and what they did, CIU, who were as you said, the center, probably something more similar to YSI than Esquerra, but there's a mix in both, really. But for me, they were all like T-shirt and tied-up kids, and I was like, bro, you're 12 and you look like you're 25 and about to work in a bank, you know? So then I met with Esquerra, and I had a meeting with who currently is now the president of the Youth Esquerra. And I don't know, the way he was explaining me how they understood the independence movement, the values they were fighting for, everything took home, you know, touched home, and I couldn't think it. The moment I had that meeting, I was like, I want to go full in. I'm a very passionate person. I don't know if it's because of the Hispanic blood or just my personality, but when I found politics, I was just dived in. even though it was just graffitis at that time and a little bit of.
I think I find that funny because I think most people of sort of that age, when they see politics, they don't dive in, they run away. So I think they're quite.
Yes, I was an actual geek, you know, like in my class it was funny because they'll be fed up, be like, oh, Valentina, man, shut up, like always talk about politics. But then a teacher will come that he's probably right-wing thinking or a bit more conservative, and they'll be like, oh, Valentina, go debate. And then we will lose the class just debating, and then they will love politics. They're like, woo!
So one of the things that, I'm assuming when you were 15, it would have been around 2014, yeah? So
Yes, yeah.
obviously the big Scottish thing that happened in 2014 was the first independence referendum.
Yeah.
How aware of how aware of that were you? I mean, was that really talked about in Catalonia much? And
yes, it was talked everywhere. Actually, members of my party were sent to Scotland to live it on first hand and come back with all the experiences. We were following it very close, you know, because for us was also a light of hope. It was a way of, okay, if Scotland has managed to agree this to a democratic referendum, even though they don't have an independence majority at the moment, and David Cameron has agreed and all that stuff, we were like, why are we not even being listened to? Like, how can they argue when the UK are at least sitting on a table and offering this democratic referendum, and all Spain was doing to Catalonia was just closing doors in our face?
Yeah.
So we were all, I remember watching it with a lot of my friends, actually, the results, being like, oh, come on. And no, oh my God. I mean, I was very hurt. I was like, oh, I mean, at that moment, I didn't know anyone Scottish, you know, I didn't have any clue about anyone Scottish or anything, but it felt like it was my loss as well, you know,
That's interesting.
because of the closeness, I feel like.
Yeah. That's interesting. So skipping ahead 2 years, there was then the Brexit vote. Very similar question. What was the feeling in Catalonia when that happened? Was it? I'm assuming it was talked about lots. I mean, it must have.
Yes. You know what? It came as a surprise because obviously we didn't follow. When you are international news, they give you small doses of international stories, so they only go for the relevant debates. So for us, all of a sudden we plug on the news one day and they're like, oh, Brexit referendum has been set a date, and we're like, Brexit what? When did this happen? Like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And then I started to get very curious because I was like, well, you know, I love the European Union. I think it's a wonderful project, but I also recognize there's a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of still the big boys club, you know, there's not much change, and the countries are still being unprotected, and the way they treated Greece or the crisis with the human refugees is an eye-opening of how still the European Union needs so much renovation. So I got into Brexit and I was looking, I'm like, okay, they might have a point. But man, then I look at the arguments and I was like, oh, senor, this is just racist. This is just racism everywhere. I was like, you had a chance to make this a civilized debate, and you went against to the, oh no, he's taking your job. All these immigrants coming here and taking our benefits. Immigrants can't take benefits until they've not lived certain time or they've paid certain amount of taxes to the UK government. Like, we don't come here and then start getting checks, you know?
I mean, that was one of the things, obviously, David Cameron actually got agreed, even managed to get even further concessions on that issue before the referendum. So, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously for me, it was something which I was right in the heart of, obviously, being in the UK. I did campaign for Remain, so obviously I was very upset by the result. So I'm interested to see that, you know, it just almost wasn't really. Was it? I mean, was there any part of you that thought actually the UK might vote to leave, or did you just think, oh, they'll vote to Remain? It's not a worry though, surely.
You know, yes, I thought it was just a bunch of nutters being like, you know, the typical extreme right, Nigel Farage, you know, this crazy man just yapping nonsense. And I thought, no, man, like the UK with how Westminster has been, there used to be the palace of democracy, you know, the example of fair play and how to behave and gentlemen and all that behavior.
Vulnerable democracies.
Exactly, you know, you used to be a role model for a lot of Europe, and now you're paying attention to this nutter yapping all for nonsense and racist stuff, and they win. And I was like,
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was very disappointed because I was convinced it was going to be a Remain. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, no, the EU has so much to offer to the UK. Like, they are going to go into so much recession. And
Yeah.
then people still jumped off the cliff.
Yeah. Well, I was equally as surprised. And as I said, I was in the campaigning, and I still, when I woke up that next day, obviously I'd been watching the results coming in during the night, and it was almost like I had to pinch myself again to make sure that night before it happened.
Yeah, the thing that really surprised me is how they were giving platform to so many undemocratic points of views. Obviously everyone has the right to express their opinions, and you have the rights, and the right to freedom of expression is a basic human right. But until a certain point, because humanity has struggled so much to get to this point of democracy that we're at right now, and we're not even near close because there's still a lot of work to do, but we are to a good point. We've achieved so much, and the fact that people, the media, or even that boss running about the country with that fake statement there, and it was allowed and it was legal, and it really disappointed me because I was like, you're really willing to sacrifice everything that so many people have died for, and that we should value more, which is democracy. And these people are here to hurt it, not to improve it.
Okay, so then in June 2017, so just a year after the Brexit vote, you moved to the UK. You moved to Scotland, to Glasgow. What was it about, well, I suppose the UK or Scotland or Glasgow, that made you want to move there specifically?
Well, I had been in various parts of England before, and I don't know, I just always felt a bit hostile. Like, I always felt like people were a bit hostile towards me, whether if it was for my accent or I don't know. And people were always very patronizing, which I hate. And then they'll be like, "What are you doing here?" In a like bothered tone of voice tone.
Yeah.
And then when Scottish people came in 2016 to the YSI, the Scottish Youth Wing from the SNP. They came to Barcelona for La Diada, which is our Catalan National Day. I became pals with them. And we blended so well. And then suddenly I was telling them, well, I had just been injured because I was a gymnast before. And I was like, my parents are not going to be able to afford university, so I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to be a journalist, but we don't have money. And suddenly my current flatmate now, he was like, well, come to Scotland, it's free. And I'm like, what? Like, I come from a country where nothing is really free, like there's always a small writing somewhere, like no way it's free. And then I went in, and even till today, I'm like, at some point he's going to arrive a bill, and I don't know how I'm going to pay it,
This scary bill is just going to appear out of nowhere.
Exactly. But then, I don't know, it all made sense. So then I started to really picture and living away. And my parents had always raised me up to be very independent and to always run away from Spain, because Spain is a country with very little future and more for young people. It's a country a bit hopeless for young people. So I came here, and with no job, a flat that I had paid the deposit in the first month, and I was gonna wing it. And 3 years later, here we are, and I couldn't be more happy of that day. It's been scary. There's been crazy up and downs, but I'm here, and I'm very happy I took that decision.
It does. It saddens me a bit to hear that you did have a bad time in England. That does make me, as an English person, a bit sad that
but
we come across as a bit like that. I mean, I think it's part of our personality. We do come across as somewhat a bit cold, don't really smile as much.
Yeah, maybe, or like, I don't know, people seem to always be in a rush. In Glasgow, everyone's got a smile, or I don't know, in Glasgow, when I say I'm from Barcelona, they always say like, oh, what are you doing here? But they say it in a tone of like, why would you change Barcelona for this? Like, they say it in that tone, not really like, don't want you here, we just think you're mad for swapping that for Glasgow, But I don't know, the last time I was in London, I was visiting my boyfriend there, and I was speaking to people, and I probably had a bit of a Scottish accent. And then people were like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, Glasgow. And I'm like, oh, yeah, oh, well, I've got this friend Scottish, blah, blah, blah. And nobody could tell that I was also from Barcelona. So that kind of made me realize, okay, English don't have a clue about Scottish people. And second of all, it's so good, or they are daft. Like, there's no way. So a guy was like, no, actually, like, where are you actually from? And I was like, well, from Barcelona. But majority of the people were like, oh yeah, she's Scottish.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that comment about Glasgow actually just reminds me of when I was I did my undergraduate dissertation on Catalan independence. I then did my master's dissertation on Scottish independence, and the difference between visiting Barcelona and being able to talk to people in the sun and it was all really nice and warm and lovely. Then I was in Edinburgh for I think I spent 2 weeks in Edinburgh overall, and the amount of times I'd be walking through the street and then suddenly rain would just come out of nowhere.
Yes, oh my god!
I'd be like, oh my god, I was in Barcelona last year.
It is crazy. Like now, I've gotten used to not going anywhere without a rainproof jacket.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you think it's sunny at 12 at noon, and at 2 it's already putting down. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. So then moving on later into 2017, obviously October 2017 was the independence referendum in Catalonia. Did you go back to Catalonia to vote in that, or did you?
Yes, both my mom and my dad were elected representatives at the polling station, so they were the ones like with the list of who could vote and that kind of thing, polling agents.
Yeah.
And I was there for my party, but the night before we had been sleeping in that polling station as well to protect it. It was it was a sweet and sour time, because we were all coming together, singing songs. Some people were crying, really like, oh my God, I'm going to vote. Some were like 80 or 90 years old, and they were like, I thought this day will never come. But also there was the fear of, oh my God, what's Spain going to do? And well, we were right to be scared, because obviously what we saw the next day, it was nothing we could have expected.
I was thinking for those older people, having probably lived through the Franco dictatorship, especially, to be able to experience, even if it wasn't a legal referendum, in inverted commas, to be able to experience any sort of vote like that must have almost been sort of a miracle for them. That must have been quite an incredible.
Yeah, I remember it's talking to one of my neighbors, because I live in a place that's only like 6,000 people, it's very, very tiny. And I was speaking to one of them, and she was very old, and she was saying, I was quiet, and suddenly this gives me a feeling that I lived before, and this time I was like, no, this time I'm voting. And I got goosebumps, because like this is someone who has experienced this on first hand, and they are feeling like this is like that time again. And this is happening in front of everyone, that a so-called democracy is acting this way, and nobody's doing anything to stop it. And we all love come to Spain for the holiday, Magaluf, Ibiza, yes, all the party, but they don't realize this is no place for living.
So it was interesting, actually. The vote was the thing, because it was the start of October 2017. I was still trying to decide what to write for my undergrad dissertation. I had lots of different ideas, and then this event happened in Catalonia, and obviously all the recordings of the police violence and all the polling stations being raided by police and all that, and it shocked me. I couldn't actually, obviously, because honestly I didn't know much about Catalonia. I didn't know much really about Spain other than sort of the basic stuff. So it did really shock me, and that's obviously why I decided to write my nationalism, looking at Catalonia. So going on to the international response, how disappointed were you by it? Because the European Union it wasn't completely sort of, in my view, it didn't sort of outright sort of support what the Spanish were doing, but it was just very quiet. It was very sort of.
They're putting their head in the sand, in the European law. I think it's law number 7, that it says, in the case of a member using its force or military force against its own citizens, they should be immediately removed from the Union. And that's exactly what Spain did, because as much as I hate to admit it, I am currently a Spanish citizen. And I was literally getting paid, because that was coming out of my taxes, to get beaten up. It was the president sent the police to beat up its own people. Like, at that point, you don't realize there's something wrong, because it's happening in every dictatorship. They start with the minorities, and then by the time you realize, you're already too deep in. And I was so disappointed from the European Union, because that's what they are meant to do. They are meant to rule over countries when they are not being democratic. And at some point, we were not asking for also like a punishment or something. We were just asking for a table of negotiation, for the EU to be there in the middle and be a moderator between Spain and Catalonia, because we were trying to dialogue. That was always our main point, dialogue. But until how long you can continue dialoguing with somebody who's closing the door on your face?
What do you think it was that? Do you think it was possibly sort of the fear of what had happened with Brexit, maybe not wanting to upset? But do you think that's why the European Union might have been so quiet on the issue, not wanting to upset nation states, given they just, well, potentially in the end did lose one of their nation states? Do you think that might have had a part of it?
I don't know. I think it was more of Spain being a big country in the EU, Spain being a powerful country, even though I don't know why, because we're poor, like I don't know why we're so respected when we have no money, but oh well. The thing is, I think it comes to that being one of the main countries in the table. You don't want to turn against your allies, and Spain is letting its people starve and investing all in military. So when you see a country doing that so recklessly, you don't want to piss them off.
So I'm assuming then you came back to Scotland after the referendum. Had you already joined the SNP at that time, or did you join the SNP eventually after?
I had joined the SNP, I think, on February 2018.
Okay, so
no, that's later. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I haven't joined the SNP then. Yeah.
So almost immediately after you got back, you decided to join the SNP. Yeah. Why the SNP over, say, the Scottish Greens or the Scottish Social, the smaller, more left-wing independence parties? Why was it the SNP that you decided to join?
Well, first, obviously, because I had kind of like an already built relationship with them, and they were sitting in the same group as our party in the European Union. And for me, at the beginning, I thought the SNP was a bit center-right party, and I was a bit like, this is like Convergencia in Catalonia, you know? But then when I started to look in and what they were doing in government and all these social policies and how much they were improving the welfare in Scotland and tackling period poverty and including LGTB education in school, I was like, whoa, this is even more left wing than my party back home, and we have it in our name, This is actual action, and I was mesmerized because I saw someone, a leader like Nicola Sturgeon, and also a team behind her, that when they see a problem, they tackle it. And I like that. That's how I am. I'm determined. When I see a mistake, I want to fix it, and that's why I was so drawn to the SNP.
Yeah. So you're currently still studying, right? You're still doing your degree.
Yes, yeah, so, from time to when I remember, but yeah, I should.
It's remarkable that you're doing all this stuff while you're doing all this stuff, joining political parties and getting really involved in these issues. You're also doing a degree at the same time. And I mean, obviously,
I have to say it's not going well. I struggle. I'm not here pretending I'm gonna get like a 1-1. I'm aiming for a 2-1, hopefully. But I have to be honest with myself. It's the time that I have, and at the end, I'm gonna have a degree because I'm working for it. But I'm gonna have a degree, and I'm gonna have also all this experience, and that's something most of my classmates are not gonna have. So yes, I'm taking a bit of more time out of my studies, but I'm investing it somewhere else. I'm just not lying in bed and watching Netflix. I'm trying to keep going up.
If it makes you feel better, I got a 2-1, and I definitely wasn't doing nearly as much as what you're doing. So don't worry.
Well, I'm saying this, and we have to see the result, so don't worry.
So, skipping forward to 2019, you spoke at the SNP's autumn conference in 2019.
Yeah, October conference, yeah.
And that was on Catalan politicians who'd been arrested in 2017 being.
Because we were aware the result was going to come up around those dates, so I knew it wasn't going to be the first day at conference, because I don't remember if that was a Sunday, probably happened a Sunday. My hopes were that it will come on Monday. So on Monday I woke up, a bit hungover, I have to say. And then I looked at my phone and I have messages from my mom, and I phoned her, and I don't know why we both started crying. Because we were like, oh my God, they're not going to see their children. Yeah. Oh my God. You start thinking, me and my mom are very emotional. We cry over anything. But we were very touched. And I had the help from my counselor, Jordan James Linden. he's so good at writing motions. You know, I'm a bit of like, I have the passion and the idea, but nothing makes really sense. You know, so he kind of he's so good at kind of like structuring those ideas. And then our motion was accepted, and I didn't have a speech because I was like, oh my God, oh señor. So I wrote that speech. I remember on my phone, in the quiet room at conference, like, I don't even know how to say 5 minutes. That's like a lot. Are people gonna be listening to me? Like, oh my, you know, when I was just what I felt, because I was an emotional wreck that day, honestly. Like, I couldn't stop crying in front of my mom. So then I go and I printed it, and before I went to see my best friend, and I could not walk. My legs were jelly. I was like Bambi, you know, trying to learn how to walk. And then I started walking towards the stage because I'm like, oh, I'm next. And they called my name, and I was like, this is me. I'm gonna fall on the stairs. But luckily I didn't. But for the first, my legs were stuck.
How did you feel after? It must have been really well, I guess awesome in the sense that you did it and you were really proud that you done it, but obviously what you were discussing clearly was a very sad and serious issue, but you must have felt very sort of proud of yourself in the sense that you were able to stand up for.
But I felt so supported, you know. No one in my mind I had expected that reaction, and also because like when I came up, the first minister Nicola Sturgeon wasn't sitting on the table, so like she wasn't there at the beginning. She came later on, so if I had seen when I come up that Nicola Sturgeon is there, I will have passed out. I was like, oh, señor, I'm not doing this. But then luckily she came after, so I appreciate that for my well-being. But then I remember just speaking the first sentence and people already clapping me, and I was like, oh, they are listening to me. Okay, this is good. This is the first time in my life somebody's paying attention to what I say. And when it finished, you know, I was not processing what I was saying. I was just like saying out of my heart. I was rushing. So many things didn't make sense because of the language barrier. I was putting things in different order, but I was just talking how I felt it. And when I finished and I saw that reaction, I just couldn't stop crying. And I was so anxious as well, you know. I had so much anxiety, and people were throwing themselves on top of me for pictures and stuff, and I was like, oh, what is this? I didn't know. I felt like a rock star in politics, and I was like, oh, there's a little world inside the geek world, you know. And I felt very embraced, and I think I felt more loved than even in my country, you know, and it was amazing.
So then, moving forward a couple of months, we had the general election. It was, I suppose, it must have been interesting from an SNP perspective because you guys had an amazing result in Scotland. But obviously, in terms of the whole country, it obviously wasn't from an SNP perspective, obviously not what you would have wanted. So, what were the emotions that evening? I think it was quite mixed emotions.
Well, at first I focused because I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, because we had spent that week before campaigning around Scotland in the bus, and it was an amazing experience. But you were driving up the country, you were waking up in Aberdeen, and suddenly in the Highlands and Islands the next morning. You know, you were all over the place, and then the elections came in. We were up all night because I was on STV as well with the special following, and the emotions were so much because it felt like a good payback. It felt like, yes, we've put effort. We've proved we're a party to be trusted, and more after, I guess, the elections we were coming from, you know, and the results. But we were not expecting a Tory majority, you know. Like, I don't know. We asked England to do its homework. We were like, please vote Labour, like. And you know, Jeremy Corbyn, now it's all a sweetheart and he's a meme all over Twitter. And I feel so bad because I'm like, all this popularity should have been in the election. Like, now it's too late.
So that was you campaigned, was that on the bus with Nicola Sturgeon, right? The how was that? I mean, it must be because obviously when I look at politics on the TV, you see politicians in politician mode, if that makes sense. What was it like seeing someone as famous as Nicola Sturgeon was just on the bus? Maybe not chilling out, but you know what I mean, just being sort of almost like a normal person.
She's so down to earth, you know. Like, at first we were freaking out because we were just sitting there, and I'm like, I swear a lot, you know. I think it's my way. I think it's because I've learned English through Netflix or with a lot of Scottish people, but I just swear a lot. So every 3 words I had to like bite my like, oh, the first minister is in the bus, so I couldn't say it. Like I wasn't barely speaking because I was like, better that than swearing. But then she's so down to earth, and she was reading a book, and she was going through, I don't know, the documents she had to read, or like whatever she does.
Yeah.
I'm not but the things she looks at, and then it just felt she's a bit kind of like also a mom, she looks after you. She comes in, and it was also my birthday and one of my other colleagues' birthday, and she was so kind and so like, oh, I can't believe you're spending your birthday here. And I'm like, oh, with you? I'm like, I'll do it any day. But I don't know, that's the thing. I feel like that's why she's such a trusted leader, because she's someone down to earth and someone you can relate to. And I think that's something not any of these Eton boys have.
So then moving into 2020, obviously the main story of 2020 has been the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's interesting actually that the support for Scottish independence has started to rise throughout the year. There was the Ipsos Mori poll recently, put it at 58% in favour of independence. And this really interests me because after Brexit, after the election of Boris Johnson, after he became Prime Minister, then he was elected in 2019, the polls didn't shift all that much. They didn't that much. I mean, it was a little bit maybe, but not a lot. But it seems this year they really have started to change. What do you think it is about? Maybe it is COVID, maybe it's not. But what do you think about this year that has made it suddenly everyone gets so much more excited for independence, so much more in favour of it?
Because the thing is, like, I think people forgot that when you vote a prime minister, you don't vote a prime minister for the good times. You vote a prime minister for the bad times. And Boris Johnson is all a laugh. It's a very personality boy, and that's why I think he won, because he had that personality and they knew how to play it very well. And when things are steady, that's very easy to do. You just keep doing what you're doing, and you have good money, so you can afford good advisors and good researchers. But then when things go wrong and you are an incompetent like he is, and you don't even know how you got there, because we don't even know how he got there, you realize that you put your trust in the wrong hands, because he can't even fix himself. He can't even look after himself, and now he has to look all over the country. And I think that's made people realize the difference. I mean, there was a clear difference before, but now it's just even bigger, on how Nicola Sturgeon has a cold head, cares about the country, is trying to think, look, I'm trying this, might not be the best, but I don't know what else to do at the moment. Everything's new for everybody, and she's honest, and she communicates, and there's always she's always every day on the Scottish government talking to the people. And Boris Johnson has been hiding for a while, and your country's in crisis, and then you see people raging how Tories voted against paying meals for kids over in the holiday term, and he's not even giving a response to the people. And it's just, I think it's just increased the fact that people are like, oh, we voted the damn boy of the class for a laugh, and now it's just backfired.
I think it's interesting actually, the comparison between here and the US, the sort of two you'd almost call them the two funny populist leaders, and how they've dealt with this crisis. Now, very similarly, they both obviously, Trump was actually quite similar during the good times. The economy was going well. He was, seen as this really exciting, fun leader. And as soon as this sort of national crisis comes in, you do see the limitations of what a purely populist ideology brings, and it does have significant limitations.
Exactly. You really realize that their policies and their manifestos are just headlines and no actual substance. There's no plan behind, oh, he's stealing your job, because it's their fault that you don't have a job. It's not the immigrant next to you. It's their fault.
Yeah.
So there's no actual plan behind that headline, and it's all coming to light.
So one of the criticisms came from, I think it was Keir Starmer, it was over a couple of days ago last week, saying that the SNP shouldn't be talking about independence at the moment because we're in a pandemic, and how, maybe rightly or wrongly, the pandemic should be the first priority and we shouldn't be talking about constitutional issues. I wonder, how do you respond to that? Because that is quite a strong argument. Obviously, when people are dying, when people are really suffering, they probably don't want to hear you talking about independence. They probably do want to hear you talking about how to solve the pandemic and how to deal with coronavirus. So I'm just wondering how you would respond to that criticism.
Well, I completely agree. We shouldn't be talking about independence. There's lives on the line. But the fact is, like, when you look about who's talking about independence, it's them, not us. Like, at the end of the day, when we're talking about it, it's more to kind of like argue back the first the first argument, because if you see who talks more about independence in the Scottish Parliament, it's Ruth Davidson, or well, Baroness Ruth Davidson, sorry, or Richard Leonard. It's not really the SNP. And obviously, yes, there's times where Nicola has had to address independence, because also she's the leader of a party that's fighting for independence, and the Holyrood elections are coming up. So yes, there's a pandemic where she's working to tackling, but in her private space, she's also the leader of a party. You know, she's not only the first minister of a country. So at the end of the day, she also has to look out for the best of the party. But as I said, I think most of the time it's not us talking about independence; it's them, because they don't have any other arguments to fight us against.
So there are still I mean, it's almost there are still 7 months until the Scottish parliamentary election, and obviously the polls are looking very good, but obviously things can change quite quickly in politics, as we've seen. How do the SNP keep this momentum going? How do you stop it slipping the wrong way, if you get what I mean? How do you stop your opponents gaining on you? And
well, I think the SNP has given a key on how to campaign. You know, I think election after election we've delivered results. We have a very dedicated team of activists. We have a winning team within our members, and you know that they are also passionate about knocking doors and spending their Sunday afternoons in the freezing cold for the party, and it's amazing. And it's amazing because party is so great. It's the people. We have good leaders, but it's the people behind this project that makes independence and the SNP so great, because you really feel like you're a family or you're part of something. I think the SNP has proven time and time again that we are a party that puts the elbows down and starts working. You know, we have never given any vote for granted, and we have always worked to not only win but to improve the vote. And these results are very good, but we know we cannot give these results for granted, and we're going to fight for every vote in Scotland.
So, talking about you in the 2021 parliamentary election, you are currently going through the process of trying to become the SNP's candidate for Glasgow and Shettleston. Just to clarify, that is for one of the constituency seats, not the regional list.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to make that clear. So, what was it? Why did you decide you wanted to be an MSP? What was it about?
Well,
what you wanted to be?
I am a member of that branch, and at the moment, I've got. I feel like it's time for our current MSP. You know, it's time to change. It's time for a new voice and a new image for the constituency, because our country is moving forward. I think our constituency should move forward too. But for me, I think, you know, I never wanted to be a politician. It's nothing, you know, when I joined politics in Catalonia, we never actually did institutional politics. You know, we were just debating and you know, getting education or you know, going campaign for elections. It was never actual sit down, write a motion or how do you want to change the world. So when I came to the SNP and I realized I could actually have a voice on what the current government is doing, that for me was eye-opening. And I'm somebody that in its childhood has had a lot of setbacks, but even since I moved to Scotland, I've had a lot of setbacks. I'm currently on universal credit. I still come from a very working class family, and last month, or well, a few weeks ago, I was a victim of an illegal eviction. You know, I think at the moment, most of my constituencies have struggled with the same things I do, and we've had an MSP that's been so long, our MSP, that I feel like there's no touch of reality any longer, because it's somebody that has a stable job and they do a lot for the constituency. They can currently understand the urgency and what these people need, because it's not lifted on their own skin. And I don't know, I just felt like my purpose was always have a change in the world and improve it. And I feel like I have so much ideas and I have this fire in my belly that is like, no, like, go for it. Like, I think I could bring so much good. And I'm somebody who doesn't believe much on myself. So for me to say this stuff and see how good I can bring is really like, okay, I might be right, you know?
So what other, so let's say you do get elected, you become an MSP, what would be the things you would fight for? I mean, obviously I think independence is probably one, but what are the other things that you would really you'd want to be known for campaigning for, wanting to be the
Well,
MSP to defend?
I would like to tackle child poverty. It's one of the biggest issues in my constituency. And I think after the vote in this past week in Westminster has just evidenced how the only way for me and for our party to tackle child poverty and other economical issues is independence, because these people are going to keep doing what they are doing, and we cannot let our children starve for a government that we didn't vote for.
Yeah.
But then also, for example, I would like to fight for universal basic income. I think that can bring stability to so many families that need it. And yes, there's people that might not be, they might not need those pounds that much, but the fact that can help so many, for me, it's already worth it. And this was more of a personal note, but I would like to create some sort of like public funeral service or some sort of basic funeral paid by the government, you know, because this economical system has even made dying expensive. And when I lost my dad when I was 19, one of the first things after realizing what I had lost was, oh my God, how are we going to pay for this? And a cheapest funeral can be 3,000, 4,000 pounds, you know, and that's more than people make a month. And at that point, you shouldn't be having to focus on how to pay that for your loved one. You should be focusing on how to heal from that loss. And I think that should be on the government's responsibility to at least guarantee everyone has a decent goodbye, you know.
Do you think would you be the youngest ever MSP elected, or would you be?
I think I would be the youngest from, well, there's other candidates that I think are my age or maybe a few months younger.
Is that from the SNP or? Yeah,
from the SNP, but I don't know, well, I might not be selected or they might not be selected, you know. If I was selected, I could be the youngest of this term. But I think the youngest ever was Ross Greer from the Greens. He was 19 or 20 something.
What do you think? Because it seems like you do find quite a lot of young politicians in the pro-independent, especially the SNP, but the Greens too. You do find a lot. Why do you think younger people get attracted and really want to put themselves forward? I think, was it Maria Black?
She was the youngest MP ever. Yeah. Well, I think it's because young people are revolutionary by nature, you know, and I think when we are experiencing, sometimes we see these political systems, there's no really space for us on the body making decisions. This is already like our parents are still making decisions for us, and it's very frustrating. And I think because independence gives a platform to young people and gives the chance to build this new country with them on it, you know, and for us it's very important, the fact that we're being listened to and the fact that we're being respected and we're being embraced, because we have a lot of opinions and life experience that is very valid as well. And just because we're young and we haven't outgrown all our potential shouldn't mean we don't have the right to speak about those or have a platform about those. So I think in the SNP, at least, we really embrace our young members. I wish we did it more, you know. There's quite still a lot of stigma towards young people, but it's a start. You know, we're starting somewhere, and there's still a long way to go in many aspects, but at least they're giving us a platform.
Okay, so assuming, I mean, obviously there's still a very long way to go, and polls can be misleading, but it looks like the SNP probably will win a majority or a very strong minority government with Green support to get them across the line in terms of a pro-independence majority. In that situation, what do you think should happen if Boris Johnson still refuses to give you a Section 30, still refuses to give you a second independence referendum? Is there much talk amongst the SNP or your own personal view of what should happen if Boris Johnson just says no independence referendum? I refuse, as it were.
It's a tricky one, because obviously I don't want Scotland doing the same as Catalonia, because I feel like Catalonia didn't have any other option, and it's not something I would support on a normal basis, but I feel like for us was the only way to go. But you can argue that now we are more far away from independence than we've ever been. So I think the SNP, we have it so close. You really want to do every step on like legally, you know, you want to follow democracy, because for us it's very important to enter the EU, and it's one of our biggest arguments why we're asking for a second referendum. So if we want independence and we win it without the international support, we're never going to enter the EU. And it happened on the Baltic War. A lot of Baltic countries gained independence by war, and it took them 10 years to get international recognition. And Scotland doesn't have 10 years outside the EU, I'm afraid. So that's why I think we should respect every democratic way. But obviously, if we are elected with a majority, and in our manifesto says we're going to deliver independence and we're going to fight for a referendum, there's probably, something hidden on Nicola's book about how to do it that way. Because I don't think they will promise that to the people without knowing an alternative. But I think then the EU should come into place. If the UK is not reacting, is not listening to the people of Scotland, then I think that's when the EU should come into place. Same with what happened in Catalonia, but hopefully they do it this time.
Okay, final question. I am interested. Do you have? I mean, you said you didn't want to be a politician, but do you have any political ambitions at all? I mean, am I possibly speaking to to a future First Minister of Scotland or Catalan president? Maybe. Do you have ambitions politically, or do you just sort of think I'll do what I can to help, and whatever happens, happens?
I don't see myself. I don't know. I don't think I could be First Minister. I don't want to say this and then one day I end up, but I don't see myself being First Minister. I do see myself being part of the team and making a significant change. That's why I'm here. But I want to be a journalist. I want to be, I want to. That's why I love journalism. Either I want to be a sports commentator or I don't know, have like a documentary program. Those are my ambitions, but politics is also my passion. So I would like to do it. I would like to be there. I would like to be part of the team and help and make significant change. But also, I'm not going to go out of my way, to fight for this. Because I'm always going to run if I feel like I can do something. I'm always going to run if I feel like I'm really good for that position. If I don't see it clear, I'm never going to run because I'm so self-conscious. If I don't see it 100%, I'm going to step back in a minute. And I prefer not doing that, because it makes you look a bit like a fool. But I don't know. My priorities are other at the moment. I want to be, as I said, part of the team, but I don't know where life will take me.
Okay. Valentina, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
No, thanks so much for having me.
Hi guys, thank you for watching this latest episode of PhD-Politico Discussions. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to give it a like. And if you want to watch more content like this, then please do subscribe. Bye guys.